Welcome. My name is Greg Marshall. I'm the Web Services Manager at Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri. And I'm presenting today on digital signs with WordPress. This is something I've done at Hyatt Web a couple times. Every time I keep changing it up a little bit, and I'm excited to present it today for WPCampus. I didn't even know about WPCampus until Hyatt Web. I learned about it there, so I'm excited to be involved with this community and be able to share some stuff and learn some stuff as well. So we can switch over to the slides. I'll get started here. So there's the topic. Like I said, I'm from Truman State University. Truman is a public liberal arts school in Northeast Missouri. So it's a good school. We're highly selective for the state of Missouri. So we get the kids that are a little bit higher test scores, a little bit more motivated students. We have about 6,000 students, so it's not a huge school. So one campus location, a very beautiful campus. We usually rank #1 in the Midwest Masters category for U.S. News and World Report. So it's a good place, but part of the problem is we're in the middle of nowhere. So here's a map of Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. You can see Kirksville there was where we're at. We're about 3 hours from Des Moines, 3 hours from Kansas City, and 3 hours from St. Louis, and then like 5 or 6 hours from Chicago. So it's hard to get the students here to want to come to school here, and then once they're here, there's not a lot for them to do. It's not like we're in a big metropolitan area. Kirksville's only 17,000 people. So a lot of what happens for students needs to happen on campus. So we have a lot of activities that go on campus, and we need to make sure we let the students know about those activities. So like I said, communicating to the students is important, and we've tried different ways over the years, as I'm sure most of you have. The students don't read emails that come from us. You know, they start filtering them to the trash. We send them too much email anyways, and they kind of get desensitized to it. They definitely don't read anything in print, and it's hard to reach them on social media. Our social media audience is really big. You know, we've got prospective students, we've got alumni, we've got parents. So trying to target just the students is kind of tough. But one thing we found that seems to work, it's a little hard to measure, but it seems to be working, is to use digital signs and TV channels to catch them where they're at, catch them when they're moving around campus or when they're in common areas, etc. So we've been doing this for a few years, and like I said, I presented on this at Hyatt Web twice. The first time I presented, we were using a Raspberry Pi, the little $35 computer, Model B, which was like the high-end one when they first came out. And then we're using Raspbian Linux, which is the Linux version for the Raspberry Pi, and the Chromium browser, which is the open source version of Chrome. And then digital signage WordPress theme by Nate Jones, the URL's on there. And we're feeding it to TVs via HDMI, and then to some TV channels in our residence halls via composite video and an RF modulator. We're just plugging it right in on one of the channels in the dorm on their TV. And that worked okay, but we had some issues. There were some performance problems with the Raspberry Pis. They weren't stable. The SD cards would get corrupted, and we'd have to reformat them and stuff. There were some Linux skills needed for setup and maintenance. You'd have to clone the image onto the SD card and be able to SSH in and set up all the variables, which URL to go to, and things like that. So it wasn't the easiest for us. So we were looking for a better solution. And then about middle of last year, we found out about the Chromebit. So we were excited to find out about the Chromebit. The Chromebit is released in November 2015. We actually started testing one that month. It's like a Chromebook, but it runs on a little stick. So it runs Chrome OS. It's got a quad-core processor with a dedicated GPU, which is way better than the old Raspberry Pis had. 2 gig of RAM and 16 gigabytes of storage. Not that you really need the storage with Chrome OS. It's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in, and HDMI and USB built in. And you can get them for about $85 on Amazon. And as you can see there, that's how small it is. You can hold it in your hand, and it's barely bigger than your hand. So the hardware on it's very simple. It's got USB at the end to plug in, keyboard and mouse for when you're setting it up. Or you can also plug in a USB Ethernet adapter if you don't want to use Wi-Fi. There is only one USB port though, so if you're hooking in multiple things, you do need a hub, but when we have them in the field, we actually just are using nothing plugged in at all. They're just as is. It's got a little DC plug for the power. It's got HDMI right on there, so you can plug it right into a port. But there's also a little extension cord it comes with if there's no room behind your TV to plug that in. You can route that. It's about 1.5 feet long. And then, like I said, it's got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in. So this has been working great. We've been using these for about a year now. You just set them up pretty quickly, plug them in, you're good to go. They're very comparable in price to the Raspberry Pi, because the Raspberry Pi, although it's $35, you still have to buy lots of accessories to support it. You need a power supply, an SD card, a case, wireless adapter if you want it Wi-Fi, and then an HDMI cable. The Chromebit's ready to go out of the box. You have everything you need. It runs the actual Chrome browser, not Chromium, so you get a little bit better experience there. The Chromium browser is kind of a separate branch, and some of the extensions don't work quite the same. This way you get better video support, you get auto updates, etc. Very minimal configuration. I can set one up in like 5 minutes and we're good to go. It also performs much better. It's got better hardware, and it's just better suited for the job. And it supports the USB Ethernet adapter out of the box, like I said. So if you can't use wireless in your setup, you can switch to Ethernet as well. So it fit all the boxes we needed right away. The Chromebit setup is you add it to the network, to the wireless or the wired. You log in with a Google account. You set up a kiosk extension so that when it boots up, it will automatically go into full screen showing a URL. And I have all these steps written out at true.mn/Chromebit setup. So if you go there, it'll redirect you to my setup instructions. As for the software we're using, we're of course using WordPress. And we were using that WordPress theme, like I said, WordPress Digital Signage by Nate Jones. And it works well, but it didn't fit our needs that we had here at Truman. We had to customize it very heavily to work on the small screens. Like I said, we had those TV channels that were using composite output. So that's only like 300 pixel resolution. So we had to adjust the CSS to make it work on a small screen. We wanted to add a sidebar on one of our larger screens for our student union, and I went in and tried to add that, and I couldn't quite get it working. And the Raspberry Pi just couldn't handle the slide transitions. By default, it had a fade transition and things like that. So we had to comment out the fade version and make lots of changes. And of course, when I first did this, I was a bad WordPress developer, and I didn't make a child theme, and I customized the regular theme. I've since learned my message, or not my message, my lesson. So I always use child themes now. But we had all sorts of problems, and we couldn't take what we were having problems with and adjust it. So I finally decided just to write my own there. Let's see. So the improvements we wanted support for video, little short clips. We want full screen images. On the previous one, it always showed the slide title or the post title. And so we had people leaving that blank in order to not have the title show up. And then if you were in the WordPress admin, you'd have all these no title, no title, no title, and you had to know which one was which. And that was kind of a pain. So we want full screen images with an optional title. We wanted to be able to have the text size adjust automatically to fit the slide, to fit the available space. We wanted a color picker, be able to set the color of the background and the text. And I wanted a better preview of what to expect when you're editing it. And the new version of Nate's theme does some of these things. I think he's got the color picker in there and maybe some support for video. But from the version we were using, which was an old version, we didn't have any of this stuff. So this was a lot of stuff we wanted to add. So like I said, I wrote my own theme. We have it based on Bootstrap. And it's got an optional sidebar that you can control if it's on the left or the right side, and you can control the width using any of the preset sizes in Bootstrap. So you've got a 12th, a 6th, etc. You know, all the sizes. An optional footer at the bottom. You can set how tall it is. So you can have short or as tall as you want. And both the sidebar and footer are widget areas, so you can put whatever content in you want. It supports full screen images as either the content or as a background that you can put more information in front of. And when I say full screen, I do mean minus the sidebar and the footer. And you'll be able to see that as we get into the demos here. It supports video. also as the content or as the background. It has a color picker for the background text, and the background color and the text color, and it has an option to automatically resize the text. You just check a box on the slide, and then there are some optional indicators, little dots that show you which slide you're on. We had one of our beta testers ask for that option, and that was very easy to add because we're using the Bootstrap carousel, and that was a feature in the carousel that we were able to turn on easily. A couple live sites that are using this. I'll show off this one down here. It'll switch over. So this is running in our museum and visitor center that our admissions office is in. Let's see if I can do full screen here. Maybe. Well, I can't tell if that went full screen because I got rid of my my view of the Crowdcast, so I'm turning that back off. You'll get the idea here. So as you can see, it's cycling through the slides. We've got the indicators here that show which slide you're on. We've got our sidebar here. This is actually pulling names from our Slate admission system, CRM, so we know who's visiting on what day. We've got headlines from our newsletter down here at the bottom right. And then we're cycling through the slides. We'll go for another slide or two here just so you can kind of see. And all this content is managed by someone in our admissions office. So once I set this up, I don't have to mess with it. She takes care of everything else. So that's that. I'll show another example here. This is our Student Recreation Center. They've gone a little crazy with the customization as far as colors and everything, but I think it works. So they're using this to promote any of their upcoming classes, and then they've got their schedule on there for the week. Etc. The schedule there is pulling from Google Calendar. That's where they keep everything. So that was just a widget we installed. Installed the plugin, turned on the widget. They were good to go. And everything we're running here, we have a WordPress network. So if we need to create a new sign, we just spin up another site and turn on the theme and install whatever plugins or activate whatever plugins we need, and we're good to go there. So. See. And the last one here, this is our student union building. This was the first one that requested that sidebar. They've got a feed there on the sidebar that shows what's going on in the meeting rooms today. And that pulls automatically from our EMS system. We use EMS for our campus management. So. And here we've got the weather widget. You can see it's 33 degrees and cloudy here in Kirksville. It's wonderful. All right, so there's some demos of live sites we are using. We'll go back to, okay. Yes, okay, so a little bit of how it works. I don't think I'm presenting full screen here anymore. Let's see if you, no, that doesn't do it, okay. We'll just go with it. So on every post, it's got this meta box that's added. So you can select the background color. You can select a background image. You can choose how that image shows up, either if it crops to fit, or if it fills it, or if it scales it, or whatever. I'll show a little bit of how that works. You can also select a video to use as your background. You can select your text color. You can choose if you want to hide your title. And you can set the scale of the text automatically to fit. And then for every slide, you can also choose the duration of how long it should show up. And then the rest of the magic happens in the theme customizer. So you can choose whether or not you show your sidebar, what side the sidebar should be on, and then the sidebar width, which is way down at the bottom. I should put those together, but as we've added features over the time, I've just added things to the bottom. You can choose whether to show the indicators, what the sidebar background color should be, sidebar text color, footer background color, footer text color. You can choose an image for the sidebar background and choose how it shows, if it's cropped or scaled or whatever. You can turn on using the slide effect. You would either have no effect going from slide to slide, or you can have a slide effect. And you can set your sidebar width and your footer height in percentage. Let's see. And we have this sign available, or this theme available on GitHub. at true.mn/sliding theme. That'll redirect you to our GitHub repository. I looked at putting it into the WordPress repository, but due to the way it's a very custom theme and doesn't work in the traditional theme mindset, it would not pass to be allowed in there, I don't think. I ran through some of the automated tests, and I wasn't showing sticky posts, and I wasn't showing categories, and all sorts of things that don't matter to a digital sign. So it made sense for us to just post it ourselves. So, and yes, there's a GitHub updater plugin, and as long as you put some certain stuff into your theme or your plugin, it will work with that, and so it'll automatically pull updates. So as soon as I push an update to GitHub, next time you check for updates, it'll be able to pull from there. So let's see, some useful plugins we're using in addition to the theme to kind of help out the functionality. We use one called Post Expirator, and it automatically expires posts, which are the slides at a specific date and time, which allows for easy post management. You can go ahead and schedule out things weeks in advance. You use the post date to schedule the start date and time, because that's built into WordPress. And then you use this. Here's an example of what it looks like to set when the post expires. And then it will either go to draft or to the trash, depending on what you set. And so that way, the next time the theme refreshes, and there's some refresh built in, the post will automatically disappear at that time. There are some other ones out there that use a little bit different form of doing it, and they apparently don't work with this. When we're doing some testing, had some issues with them expiring, but if you use this one, it's guaranteed to work. Another one we use is the Intuitive Custom Post Order plugin, which allows you to drag and drop posts to change the order of the slides. Otherwise, you're stuck with the reverse order of the post date. So the newest ones show up and then in reverse order. But with this turned on, you just drag them up and down to put the order you want. Another one is Weather Underground, which has widgets and shortcodes to be able to put weather on the sign. People like weather on signs. I don't know why, but they do. So there's an example up here of a widget, and down here is a shortcode and what that looks like. This is an old screenshot from October, and I think from Memphis, when I was getting ready for High Ed Web. So it is not currently 61 degrees, and it is not going to be this nice coming up, unfortunately. So, another one that we use is the continuous RSS scrolling plugin. It gives you a little widget that rolls through any RSS feed. There's a little GIF here of what it looks like. Again, these are old headlines from like October. These pulled from USA Today, I believe. You have to find the right RSS feed that does not have clickbait headlines. If you get clickbait titles, they do no good here. You have to have a title that summarizes the story so people get the idea of what's going on. So that's a good one that we use quite a bit. When I showed the one of our museum, it was using this to pull our feed from our campus newsletter. Another one that's pretty powerful is the JSON content importer. You can use the JSON feed and format it nicely on a slide or in a widget. This is good because we've got a lot of APIs we're using, and of course WordPress itself has APIs. So if you want to pull in some custom content and there's not a plugin existing to do that, you can use this, and you don't have to write a plugin as long as you can get a feed of it. So here's an example. This is what the feed looks like for our sports events, and then this is what it looks like formatted onto one of our sites. Yep. Let's see. And then another plugin that I'm just starting to work with is Elementor, and that is a live page builder for WordPress. And this gives you a little bit more options on the layout of the post. You can drag and drop layouts over that are, multiple columns and multiple rows, and then you can put little widgets into it, such as text, images, etc. You can do a lot more styling there as far as font color and size, etc. And you can add animations, so you can have things sliding in and bouncing in and things like that. So, like I said, we just started playing with this one. Actually, yesterday there was a bug with the theme that allowed it to not work, but I got that fixed. So if you get the version today, it will support this and work pretty well together. Another plugin we use, and this is pretty much unique to our institution, but we use Rave for emergency alerts. And Rave provides a CAT feed, Common Alerting Protocol. So we wrote a plugin that will check for the Rave feed and then display them on screen. So the whole screen will turn red and pop up an alert with the subject up there and then any instructions, etc. So if we do have some sort of emergency, you know, heaven forbid there's a shooter or anything else, we'll be able to pop this up on every sign across campus automatically, and we don't have to do anything. So. All right, so I'm going to do a little demo of some with a live site here. This is running on my local machine with Vagrant. While I'm loading stuff up here, I also want to give a shout out to Phil Shen, who's watching. He was one of my early testers. He saw my first presentation at Hi Web back in 2014, and then right as I was writing my new theme, he sent me a message, said, "Hey, are you still doing stuff with WordPress signs?" And so he was the right time to test out the new theme, and he's given me a lot of feedback and helped me fix a lot of bugs, so I appreciate that. So here's WordPress. I've got a few plugins turned on and then the theme turned on. I'm going to add a post here and show you how easy it is to configure. So let's see, WPCampus demo will be our title, and then we'll just grab some Lorem ipsum here. This is way too much text to put on sign, but this is just for demo. So we'll publish it, and then we'll show you what it looks like here. So I'll refresh. There we go. So again, I'm not doing full screen here, so the things are a little off, but that's what it will look like. Let me see if I can make it a little wider. There we go. Use up more of my real estate there. So I've customized this with a sidebar. I set the background sidebar to blue, put in a little widget to show Twitter tweets with the hashtag of WPCampus, so that's showing up there. Down at the bottom, I have a text image or widget with an image in it. I have a clock widget. The clock widget's part of the theme, and then I've got a feed of the WordPress .org RSS feed there. So that's what one slide looks like. Now we'll go through some of the options here. So I can select the background color. Let's do red background there. And we'll just update, show you what that looks like. There we go. And then if I said, you know, I don't want the red, I want an image there, I can grab an image. We'll use this one here. It's going to be real ugly, but there we go. So that's hard to read, but if depending on your content, you could have some options there. Like I said, with the background image, you can set it to crop to fit, which will keep it full size and just take its chunk out of the middle. And you can have it fit inside, which will give you black bars possibly, or background color bars, actually, whatever color your background is. Or you can stretch it, which will fit it exactly to fill the whole area. Let's see. And then real quick, as part of my demo, I'm going to set my text color. We'll show what that looks like. So when you set the text color, it actually sets the title and the content and everything all together. Using Elementor or another plugin, you could change your text color separately, or you could write some CSS or whatever. Let's see. And then we'll show what the video looks like. Here we go. And everything, it pulls the videos, images, and everything that's from the WordPress library. So it's very intuitive if people are already familiar with WordPress. Let's see. Oh, and I did find you can't have a background image and a video at the same time. So we'll turn off the background image. There we go. Oops. All right. Turn off text, the background color too, I think. because I did the video as kind of a background layer, and the slide is on top of it. There we go. All right, so there's my video. So you can see it'll play through that. And since you can set the duration, you just figure out how long your video is, have your slide that long, and then have a transition to the next one. Let's see. And like I said, we can hide the title. So if I hide the title and actually delete all my text, refresh that. There we go. So this is an example of just a video slide right there. So we use that a lot as well. Again, we don't put audio in the videos. It would support it, but that's going to be obnoxious for anyone sitting near the sign for a long period of time. So everything's just video only. Let's see. I guess the final option I didn't show was the scale text automatically to fit. We'll show what that looks like here. So we'll put that on. So there's an example there. Again, it's hard to see with the video background. Let me turn that off real quick. There we go. All right. So you can see it start out there big and then it shrunk down. It does that when it first loads, but then when it cycles through after that, it doesn't change it any. Real quick, I'll add a couple other posts so you can see what it looks like actually sliding through. All right, so we'll add another post. We'll do a different background image here. We'll do a girl under a tree because that's a classic college picture right there. There we go. And then real quick, I'll show you also what you can do with Elementor, since that's pretty fun. So we'll hit edit with Elementor here, which actually loads up a different view. Let's see. And you can see here that it's got a section there. It by default brought over the content I already had. I'm going to delete that. And then I can add a new section, or I can add something there. So we'll add an image to that. We'll use this guy. And you can choose the size. And then you can do cool things with this, like I said, the animation. So we'll have him slide in from the right. When I first tested this, I actually had him sliding in from the left, and that was kind of weird because the slides were coming from the right, and you could see him like before the slide loaded. So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but pretty straightforward. So, and then we'll add a section there. You can see when I add the sections, there's all those different layouts. You can do one column all the way up through like 4 columns, and then there's some staggered views, etc. So we're going to add a, let's see, in here, we're going to add a heading. Drag that over. We'll make it a heading 1. We'll make it white, and then we'll set it to bounce in. There we go. There we go. So now I can close that out. I want to refresh. You can see it in action. So there, we got our bounce and our slide there. And then we'll go on to the next slide. And then when it comes back around, it'll do the same thing again. So. There we go. So it gives it a little bit more interaction and motion there to catch people's eye. So that's pretty much it for my demo. There are a few other options out there for digital signs. I don't want to just talk about my version. There's the Nate Jones theme that we used to use that I talked about. It's based on the Zerb Foundation, which we're not really familiar with, which is why I went for the Bootstrap option. But it's good, it's free, and it works pretty well. We also have the Digital Sign Press, which is a plugin, not a theme. It's free for basic use, but then $149 for the Pro. But it seems to have a good slide designer, which I did not have. But now that we've got the Elementor, that seems to kind of be making that a little less of an issue. Let's see, there's also WP Digital Signage, which is hosted, theme, or plugin. Lots of options there. But it's still in beta, so it's not exactly available. It's got more transition options because it uses Revolution Slider. That's one thing I would like to fix, is to have more options other than just the slide. It's a small fee if you have it hosted. It's $25 if you have the plugin or theme. I assume that's one time. But like I said, it's still beta, so not much information there. Dboard is another theme. It's also still in beta, but it seems to have a cool content builder. It seems to have a timeline here where you can have things coming at different times. But no idea of the cost on that one because it's still in beta, not much available. So future improvements for our theme would be more transitions. Currently, we just have the slide on or no transition at all, and then to have some sort of layout builder. But since I've discovered Elementor, that may not be an issue anymore. We can just recommend that. It is open source. It's on GitHub. If anyone wants to fork it or do a pull request, whatever, you're welcome to. We'll see what happens with it. If you want to contact me, there's my email. I'm on Twitter, and of course on the WPCampus Slack channel. And we're using the WPC Online channel today to discuss everything from today. So let's see. Got some questions down here. Okay. Someone had asked if I wanted to share the code for the cap alert. Yeah, we can do that. We'll have to put it out on GitHub, but that shouldn't be a problem. So I'll put that out there. And the reason I haven't put it out there before is that we're tying it into our API system as well. So some of that would have to change for different installation. But as far as the parsing or whatever, you could have it pulled directly from your cap source and ignore the stuff that's specific to our institution. Oh yeah, good question about getting the Chromebit to auto-load a specific website and not be open to student plugin and reprogramming. So we're using the plugin or extension that's called Kiosk. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, right here. So we set this to, hopefully that's showing up there. Yeah, set this to auto load at startup. You have to have a password to get out of the config. This is what the config looks like here. You set your URL. You can set your options for it. You put it on a user password. So a student could mess with it, but they would have to reset it, which takes a little bit of work, but it's not impossible. So far, we haven't had any problems, knock on wood. But yeah, with the Kiosk extension here, it automatically uploads the screen, full screen automatically. They can't do anything with it without the password or without resetting the whole thing, which would be doable with a paperclip and a keyboard. But so let's see. So central control, I think we could do some of that if we had the Google device management on these, which we don't because we're cheap. So I just set them up once. It does have a refresh option built into it. And the theme also has a refresh option, which I forgot to mention. The theme, you can set how often it refreshes, and it will actually do a little AJAX check to see if the content has changed. It checks a hash that includes the widget content, the post content, the version of the theme, the version of WordPress, etc. And if that hash has changed, then it will reload after the time that you've set. So if you set it for 5 minutes, after 5 minutes, when it gets back to the start, it will refresh. We've had some issues with our web server, so that hasn't worked great for us because sometimes we'll get some 403 errors and 402 errors because of our caching and our back end. If it were working well, that wouldn't be an issue, but if it does get on an error screen, it gets stuck on the error screen, and you have to go visit it. So I've now started turning on an auto refresh as well. There's an auto refresh option in the Kiosk extension, So I set that for 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes, it'll reload, etc. So let's see. So the student union room usage, we are using the EMS system from Dean Evans, I believe it is. And that's a desktop piece, but then it also has a web client. And I don't know if it has an API or if we just went straight to the database. I think we may have just gone straight to the database, but that's how we're pulling that information. So we wrote a little plugin that has a shortcode and a widget that'll just grab the data. And we use that also on our student union website to pull that data and a few other places. So it's code where we're using multiple places. So I think that's all the questions that have been posted. Any others on there? All right, well, if you think of something later, feel free to contact me. I'll put my contact info back up there. And I'll be on the Slack channel shortly to answer some questions there as well. So thank you for joining me, and hope to hear from some of you, and feel free to download it, play with it. Let me know if you have questions in the future as well. Thank you.